Hello, hello,
Hello.
everybody. So my name is Chad. We are recording right now from the bridge. It won't always be like this. Sometimes there will be, you'll just see our faces on Zoom. We'll be doing it from our homes. We're from different parts of the country. But what we're doing here today is we're talking. There's a new thing that's happening. So what we're doing is we are setting that up and letting you know what the new thing is and how it's going to operate. So, my name is Chad, and this is my friend, and I will let her introduce herself.
I'm Morgan, and Chad and I have known each other for 20 plus years. But I am a writer, I'm an artist, I am a spiritual thinker. I like to look beyond religion and make it more universal to touch all lives. Because I believe that's our calling. We're not meant to just speak to Christians. We're meant to speak to the Gentiles as well. We're meant to share the message of God's love and the empowerment that God's love brings into our lives. So, this new thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at things from a religious or a Christian standpoint specifically to understand messages from the Bible, modern songs, movies, the messages that society is filtering out to us, but then also to look at that from a more spiritual, a more universal, a more encompassing perspective. So today's thought is about the Ark of the Covenant.
You mentioned that you were a spiritual person, and I think that we're all spiritual people. I think we're all created to be spiritual beings. Sometimes we have a lot of baggage with religion or even Christian, but I do think, and I think part of that comes from the disconnect we have with the Bible, thinking the Bible was only about a place then and there, and being really, really hard to connect it to now. So as we talk about the ark and the spirituality and those words that sometimes give us that sometimes make an obstacle for us to get by. I think as we start to see that, we see that the Bible was written there and then, real people in real places at real times. This was a real, some of the books in the Bible are actual letters that were written by people in their hand to communities all over the world and about real things that they were going through. Some of the things that we brought into our world were actually very, very specific to theirs. But then there are other things that are huge principles that we bring with us. The ark's one of them. But as we find those things and we start moving into those things, we will see that it wasn't just there and then, it was here and now as well. Creation's a great example because I think so much of what's important about who we are and how we are in the first two chapters or three chapters of the Bible, and we miss so much of that arguing over if it's 24 hours in a day. You know what I mean? So there are these big, really big concepts that speak truth and sing truth into every part of our lives, and we don't always see that. So anytime our job as communicators or authors, the books that you've written have this huge spiritual component, and they might not mention God, and they might be in the context of a really interesting like Lord of the Rings ish context, but she's talking about these real huge concepts that are based in the Bible, based in God, based in a spirit. And so it's just our job to be able to make a bridge, so to speak. I mean, this place is called the Bridge. So it works on so many different levels. But as of right now, it's this bridge from here that can be really, really hard to see how that applies now, how a book written 6,000 years ago applies today, here, now, in this little town in Pennsylvania. So I did mention your books, though. Would you please talk about the books that you've had published and
one that's coming.
Yes, and then the other arm of what we're doing here.
So I self-published a trilogy that was called Dark Fae. It's an imaginary world. It's fantasy-based. It's basically a story of battling good and evil. But I wrote it because I had learned about the Lord's Resistance Army in Uganda and the travesty that was happening there. They abduct children from villages, force them to commit crimes against their own people, and really devastate lives. And sometimes these children escape. And then how do you welcome them back into your society when you know what they've done? So my story kind of mirrors that in a broad way. And it's about learning how to accept each other, learning how to forgive, and learning how to build a cohesive community through trust and understanding. And that led me to start writing more spiritual books. So I do have one that's just been signed with my publisher. It's called Living in Coherence. And it's a little bit more modern thinking, I guess you might want to say, about how we as spirits come to Earth from God to live specific lives, to learn something and to give something back. And when we are able to remain connected with God, the power of God can flow through us and cause miracles to happen not only in our own lives, but in many other lives. We have no idea. Just living our day-to-day lives as letters or recommendations of Jesus Christ and his love for us, how our lives touch. We don't have to be Oprah Winfrey. We don't have to be Will Smith. We can touch lives every single day just by being a loving, forgiving, accepting human being. So living in coherence is about how you do that and how, as spirits or energetic beings, we can take the messages from the Bible and understand them maybe in a new way, which leads us back to the Ark of the Covenant.
Yep, it's going to be really interesting. As you were talking, the terms that you use are really, really interesting and different from the ones that I would use. And it'll be fun to see those linked together.
Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting. So the Ark. So the Ark. We'll just dig into the Ark just a little bit. So the Ark in the Old Testament, there's a list of God is a God of order. So you'll see as the things work in the Bible, as God is commanding the temple, even the law, the list of the law, there's 613 separate commands, and it is very, very specific. And then as you start to look at what the priests wear, what they can eat, how big the temple is, there is exactly this kind of precision that comes with this box. And really, it's a box. It's a box that's made for. So the story is Moses goes up on a mountain, Mount Sinai, and everything happens on Mount Sinai through the scripture. So Moses goes up there, and while he's up there, the commandments, the 10 commandments, in the beginning, it's the whole law. The art that we see, there's just 10. It's all written on these tablets, big stone. We've probably all seen some kind of pop culture representation of them, of what they look like.
Charlton Heston with the books. Yeah.
Yep. And as Moses is coming down, the rest of the Israelites, he's been gone so long, the rest of the Israelites have decided they can't wait anymore. They need some other way to pick some other picture, some tangible thing. So they make a gold cow, and it's such a silly story, but and as what we're doing here, this is a gold cow, but we do this in lots of different ways now too. I mean, we think we've so much evolved past golden cows and idolatry and things, and the story is still exactly the same. So Moses comes down and he's angry and throws them down, and they crack and break. Eventually, God makes them again. That's what goes in the box. There's some other things that go in the box. This Ark of the Covenant. The covenant just means promise, and these are the terms essentially. So he puts them in this box.
The vows of the marriage.
The vows of the marriage, yes. And so this box, through all the story of the Israelites, goes different places. It's intense. It ends up in the Holy of Holies in the temple. It gets lost. It gets lost several times. All of these things happen. It's a really strange history. But essentially, it's just a box.
Or is it? What if? That's what I like to say. But what if? When I hear that story, I see so much symbology. I see Mount Sinai. You know, like he said, everything happens on Mount Sinai. Did Moses really climb up a mountain? Or is Mount Sinai a representation of Moses just separating himself a little bit so that he can focus on God? Who knows? The box that was created to hold the letter of the law. It was a box. They made it. They carried it around. And because of that, did they win a lot of battles? You know, kings fell, and society was cohesive. Everybody was faithful because they had this focus. Rather like the church or the ring on your hand. Was it just a symbol? Was it a focus point so that people could center their thoughts and understand specifically what they were supposed to do? Because as human beings, we need structure. This wonderful place. You know, church is a building. The Ark of the Covenant was a box, but it represents a whole lot more. It's a place where we can come together. It's a place where we can focus our ideas. And it's a symbol of power. It gives us faith. It helps strengthen our faith. But what if the power that the box gave the Israelites was always there within us? Because we as spiritual beings are the embodiment of God. We carry the light of God within us. That is the spirit within us, the spark of God. And when we focus our energy, when we focus our thoughts, we are able, like Jesus Christ, we are able to perform miracles. The apostles performed miracles. Jesus sent them out and told them to heal the sick and repair the lame and heal the blind so they can see. That wasn't Jesus Christ doing that. That was the spark of God within each of us, focused, healing others. So I wonder, was the Ark of the Covenant just a place for us to start? It gave us a focus, but it got lost along the way.
Yeah, you made that great analogy with the wedding ring. Like, this wedding ring is, it's just a piece of rubber. But it means an awful lot. And, you know, you mentioned about it getting lost and how significant that was. You can always kind of tell if you're with someone who's married and they stop wearing their wedding ring, there's something going on. You know, there's maybe they lost it. Of course, maybe they just lost it. But that's not usually the case. It's a symbol of an inner reality. Mm-hmm. And I think that's such a neat thing. And the other thing that you mentioned was how it would move from if it's actually a picture of an inner reality, And the Bible makes that really, really clear and obvious and explicit in books like Ezekiel and Jeremiah, where God says, I will write the law on their hearts, and and they will be the temple, and all of those. Paul writes those in his letters. So now, instead of just in the box, it's in us. And if we can just make that connection, instead of the box being in the Holy of Holies in the temple, what if the temple changed and now the box is inside of us? And that's what she's talking about, the Spirit and the Spirit of God. And that is also really, really explicit in the New Testament, where it's written, the same Spirit that raised Jesus Christ from the dead is within you. And Jesus says things like, you will do miracles greater than these. That's why the language is so important, what we're using, because sometimes the language can provide the obstacle that's impossible to get by, which I used the word religion earlier, or we used the word religion as an example. And the literalness that we choose with the scriptures can sometimes be the obstacle. We think that a box is what it is, and that's all that it can. And that's not. And religion is simply just the way that we organize. That's it.
So my sister and I were talking about this morning, and we started talking about how, 6,000 years ago, 7,000 years ago, whenever the box was made, people lived much more simply. They told each other stories to teach each other lessons and to share abstract concepts. Jesus taught with parables, and the Bible is full of stories that we tend to argue about, were they real or are they symbolic? And I say, why can't they be both? She and I were talking about Jonah and the whale. And she was like, obviously, a man did not get swallowed by a whale and, come back and tell the Ninevites to repent. But I said, yeah, but what if God is possible, if God, through God, all things are possible. What if you're a Ninevite, okay? You're out on the beach, you're fishing, you're having a beer with your friends, you're kicking back, you didn't go to church, it's Sunday, but I'm fishing. And you hear the sound, and you see this great big fish coming up out of the water. And what does it do but it throws up this man? And he's bleached white from the gases in the whale's belly, and he's got seaweed hanging from his hair, and his clothing are half dissolved. And he stumbles out of the water and he says, repent. I'd repent. So why can't these stories in the Bible be both? Let's stop arguing about the nitty-gritty and understand the truth and the beauty of the story. So back to the Ark of the Covenant. It was a box. It was beautiful. It carried it around. It held the tablets. Where did it go? What happened to it? I don't know. What happened to King Tut's treasures? It was missing for thousands of years. And then we found them again. In Revelations, it says that we will find the ark again. It will be revealed with the second coming of Christ. Now, the second coming of Christ is a total other topic that we might talk about someday. But what if the Ark of the Covenant disappeared because the Israelites, just like all of us, wandered away? Stopped going to church. Their relationship with Jesus or with God fell apart. And because of that, separation from God, terrible things started to happen. Jerusalem fell, the temple was destroyed, chaos ensued.
Not necessarily punishment, but just consequence of the fall, of the separation.
Right. Because when you are no longer living in coherence. You know how it is when you know that I'm meant to do something, I just don't know what it is. I know there's a purpose for my life, but I'm in chaos. I don't know what it is. Why are you in chaos? Because you're not in coherence. Everything in nature functions in beautiful coherence, in beautiful symmetry. Albert Einstein said that the clockwork symmetry of the universe can only point to the truth that there was or there is something in control, because otherwise chaos would ensue. And every lesson in the Bible kind of teaches us that. When we follow God, when we are part of that relationship, when we carry the Ark of the Covenant with us, all things are possible. When we put that ark down and walk away from it, we wander into the weeds. We start getting bitten by mosquitoes, we get ticks, we get stung by a bee. We were screaming and yelling, and where am I? Suddenly I'm lost. I'm in the middle of the woods. I don't know where I am. That, I think, is part of the story. It's the understanding that when we wander away, and it doesn't matter if you're Christian, it doesn't matter if you're Buddhist, it doesn't matter if you're Muslim, if you're Jewish, or if you're just a spiritual person who understands that something is up there that's greater than us. I don't know what it is, maybe, but I understand that something's up there. When we live in that relationship, all things are possible.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Absolutely. I think that's a really, really perfect place to stop. But one thing that I do just want to talk about is listening to both of us as I'm listening to her, and I know what I'm thinking that I would say. We're different. We're different, and we have somehow decided that we don't talk politics and we don't talk religion, and I can't for the life of me think about why that could be. Because the most fun thing that I can think of is to hear two people who speak differently, who maybe are coming at things from a different way, and find those places where there's truth involved here. Yep, there's truth involved in this. So we just have to find that. And I think that's been such a place where things have fallen apart in modern culture, probably because we have to be right, or we're right or wrong, we're in or out. It's very, very divisive, and I don't think it has to be that way. So this, I think, could be a really fun thing going forward, and I'm looking forward to the times where I really, really disagree with you, and where you really, really disagree with me, and we can go, and I don't really think that's the case, because it's coming. It's coming because we're not obviously the same person, and we have different experiences, and we have different backgrounds, and all of these things, and different ways that we read the same scriptures. You see it on TV. People are arguing wildly different points using the same scriptures. So I think that this will be a really, really fun thing to interact with. Yes. And so as we see how this goes, it's been really fun listening to you. And I mean, her books are terrific. You can find them online. That's my little plug for her. Thanks. There's not a lot of better ways to spend time than reading that trilogy that she's talking about. But this is really fun, and one of the initial visions of the faith community that we're a part of was that we would bring people of different ideas and different experiences together, and just let people talk and be respectful and listen to each other and find the space that we're together. Think of the Venn diagram. I think that there's a much, much bigger shaded area in the middle than we ever could have guessed. And I think that's by design, but it does take work, and it takes wrestling, and it takes presence and listening and a care to try and find this truth in all these things. The ark's just a great example. It's just a great example how a box is divine, and if a box can be divine, if and the temple is now us, we are divine. What else can be a marriage relationship? Our work can be divine and charged and sacred and all of those things. So I think that the ark teaches so much more. And like you were saying earlier, we get so wrapped up in if there was a whale, that we miss every part of the story going, well, no, it has to be this way. It either did or it didn't happen. And that's where we dig in for some reason. And I guess that's part of us just wanting to be right and find the thing that separates.
I think wanting to be right is an indication of our need to feel safe in what we believe. And because we live in a world where we do not feel safe, division is always going to happen and this and that. But I think the most important thing about this new thing, and that's what we're going to call it, a new thing, is that you don't necessarily have to agree. But what if? Just consider the possibility. That's all I'm asking. What if? What if there is life somewhere else? What if there are people who come back through new lives again and again? We're going to explore things because all things are possible through God.
I do really like, and you can say goodbye here in a second. I do really like the way that you said that has to do with our need for safety, because that sounds much, much better than the way that I would say it, which is our selfish nature, where we want to be right, where we need to be right because we
feel right. Because
so I like it that I like what you've done with that. Maybe, well, I don't think I'm going to change my mind, but I do think I could. But I like it.
But I think we're both right, and it's an example thereof of the whale probably didn't happen, but what if it did? Because a man washing up on a beach, saying repent is pretty good staging as far as I'm concerned. So one of the other things that we're going to do here, obviously, people have lots of questions. People want to know, well, let's look at this. Well, let's look at that. So once we get the ball rolling here and this becomes a podcast, you'll be able to comment questions. You'll be able to say, hey, can we explore this? We're always going to be open to looking at different possibilities. And so now, if you're willing, if anybody has any questions or comments, I think now would be a great time.
Yes, we are actually in the faith community right now, so we're not alone. So we will be.
We have a wonderful congregation here of people who are interested.
If anyone does have any questions now would be great.
Or comments. Feedback is a good thing.
Or should we just turn this off and then we can have that discussion off the...
Yeah.
All right. Well, goodbye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
See you next time.
Super fun. Yeah, thanks.